Hello, this is MichelleKoppelE. I'm an enrolled agent specializing in the ERC. So we've had a lot of information on how we should be handling the ERC for tax purposes, and that came out from the IRS Bulletin 2021-20, which tells us very clearly to go back and amend the years that the wages were paid that qualified a company for the employee retention tax credit. So that means going back and amending 2020 and 2021. However, nonprofit organizations have different principles of GAAP that they have to follow. So GAAP, in general, US GAAP netting income with expense incurred is not encouraged because GAAP generally does not permit net presentation in financial statements. Now, the IRS has not commented on this topic, so we have to go look into different opinions and specialists in nonprofit organizations. So the AICPA came out with a recommendation, and they said nonprofits should use ASC 958-605. It's a common standard used to account for government grants. And this has standard recognition of contributions received. Now, this is really interesting because this does not require you to go back to amend. Again, this is coming as a recommendation for the AICPA, which is very credible. However, it's not law. So sometimes the AICPA will give recommendations and then later the IRS will confirm or agree with that. So nonprofit should recognize a refundable advance until the conditions have been substantially met or explicitly waived by the donor, and that is ASU 2018-08. Once the entity determines the conditions have been met or explicitly waived, revenue is recognized as earned and the refundable advance is removed. Now, my understanding of this would be that, let's say you're doing your 941X and sending that into the IRS to get your ERC refund. At that time, it's pretty substantially clear that you're going to get that refund. And at that time is when the income would be recognized. And so that would mean if you were doing that today, that income would be recognized as a refundable advance, as a contribution in 2023. Now, this solves a whole lot of problems about going back and amending for these companies that have federal grants, because then we start running into, is this double dipping or not double dipping? Now, some people will just say across the board, you can't double dip. Well, that's just not true because there are cases that you can. So there are rules that are written into the law about the ERC. You can't use the same wages for PPP as you use for ERC. You can't use the work opportunity credit wages for the ERC, but you can use the R&D credit wages for PPP. So the law is not always that straightforward and logical. So in reading through and researching this, I came across an article that said that the Department of Health and Human Services grants to healthcare providers under the CARES Act can be received in addition to the ERC. Now, I'm looking for a citation on that before I can state it irrevocably that it's true, but we want to check that before we use wages that were paid for by a grant. So there's special things that we have to be looking into when we're talking about nonprofits. I think some of this issue is going to be resolved just in the timing of the recognition of that income. And if we're following these guidelines, the GAAP guidelines for nonprofits, the IRS hasn't come out with any bulletins stating exactly how to handle this. So the other thing that I wanted to say is there was an article by Alyssa Blomel, CPA, that the ERC is a non-exchange transaction and nonprofit organizations should account for the credit as a contribution. So the government appears to have provided the credit without the intent of exchanging goods or services of commensurable value and had full discretion in determining the amount. In addition to that, the FASB approved a new method of disclosure on the ERC, saying that the financial statements for nonprofits need to clearly disclose the ERC, and this is in their accounting standards update 2021-10. So as I get more information on nonprofit organizations, or really it's going to be opinions, I think, I will post and update you on what I discover, especially with regards to federal grants and the ERC and the ability to get both. So I'm looking for that. I believe it's in the law and the CARES Act. So I'm still looking for that. So this is MichelleKoppelE giving you an update on the ERC and nonprofit organizations. Thanks for watching.